Last episode, we talked about the Marianan explosion and the diversity it brings. The planet has now experienced a rapid change from a barren planet to a cauldron of diversity. As of now, the dry land is still devoid of life, but the oceans, however, is not. Now, we are going to go in depth on the major phyla and the ecosystems in the Marianan period. These organisms will take on all kinds of niches around the world, evolving, eating, and surviving. Life has begun kicking off in the oceans, diversifying into myriads of clades. Now it's time we will see how these species are faring across the biosphere. Right after the recession of the microbial mats, the sedimentary layers began to dominate the benthic biomes, creating the sandy plains, a biome where sand dominates the seafloor. The soft sediment makes it hard for an organism to attach itself on the substrate. The biodiversity of the Pacifican biota is lost. However, it is far from barren. Darting across the water column is a species of Pseudospinocorpus, a creature with a notochord. This is called a dartfish, a simple fish-like organism that uses its speedy maneuver to move against the current. This organism swims while engulfing small plankton in the water with its jawless mouth. Below, at the seafloor, lies a saxopod, a crab-like organism from the Malacopod clade, a biformata specialized in ambush predation, catching prey with their arm-like appendages. This one in particular is a box crab for its box-like appearance. It digs itself into the sediment and waits using its hair-like seta to detect movement in the water, and uses its arm to ambush prey when it gets too close. It crawls slowly by dragging itself with its small feet and uses these feet to dig into the sediment. It also uses its forward feet to jump into the incredible speeds to catch prey with its pincer-like forward appendages. Note its compound eyes located between the forward appendages. It uses those eyes to hone in on their prey, in this case, this unfortunate hexagonian. Despite their previous dominance from the early Marianan period, the hexagonians aren't faring well, and their species are dwindling. This hexagonian is from a soft-bodied clade, the Ahexatestates. Their slow movement makes them vulnerable to more advanced and faster organisms in this period. Arthrocorpus, Malacobrachids, and the Nyxostellans are common predators to these hexagonians. However, not all hexagonians are vulnerable. Some have shells which protects them from predation. They are the hexatestates. This particular one is protected by a shell, but some hexatestates have a spiky shell. Some hexatestates retract their soft body into the shell for protection. However, this shell innovation is not foolproof. Some animals could flip their body, exposing the soft underside. Thus, the arms race of evolution never stops. What we are seeing here is an arthrocorpus that has caught its quarry. A Pisiaformis lie dead, half eaten by the arthrocorpus, a grisly sight. They have forward appendages which they use to catch prey, grabbing them and bringing their quarry into their mouths. They may also exhibit filter feeding hairs, which is used to strain water for the abundant plankton. By the corpse there is a vermidiata, a scavenger of the sea that caused the scent of death. This vermidiatan will eat on what is left of the Pisiaformis and return the nutrients to the environment, resetting the food cycle. Now, let's move on to the colorful reef. It is full of life filled with myriads of creatures. The colorful coral-like brachiogastrons dominate, creating shelter for thousands of animals. The brachiogastron take on many shapes and sizes, all impossible to list down. One of the biggest brachiogastron colonies is the Sampagia ajayana, a large coral a meter in radius shaped like a flower. Another is the Arboran gastrogenes, a tall brachiogastron colony with branching stony arms. Another brachiogastra is of the Tubaca family, corals that form tubes or chimneys, sucking in particulates in the water and expelling waste through the tube. One last notable brachiogastron here is the Singulara petita, a brachiogastron with a simplex body plan. This umbrella-like coral is soft, flowing with the current. Its yellow coloration is due to its algal symbiote filling its cavity. This coral houses algae, giving the algae protection in return for food. Many of the corals here house algal symbiotes, which is similar to how earth corals recruit zooxanthellae into their body. This colorful Pisiaformis takes up residence in the reefs. Animals that usually live in the reef-like biomes are colorful, some to impress mates or as camouflage. This Pisiaformis hides among the colorful coral, for their predator is swimming about above. This predatory Arthrocorpus is one of the usual visitors of the reef. This one in particular have long spiky forward appendages, which they use to reach into the crevices for their unfortunate prey. Another organism found in the reef is a Vesta snail. Despite it being named a snail, it is Carlin 5's version of an earth snail. They are a eumalacopod, a cousin to the saxopod clade, where instead of having a chitinous exoskeleton, they are soft-bodied, but this one in particular have shell very similar to earth snails. This shows that despite being different to earth, animals can convergently evolve despite differences in biology and body. One other resident of the reef we see here is the jet squid. The jet squid is closely related to the Vesta snail, a eumalacopod as well. However, this jet squid uses jet propulsion to escape predation or catch prey. Now that we are talking about the biformatas such as the saxopod and the eumalacopods, it is time to further discuss the significance of these biformatas. But before we go in depth on the organisms, we should talk about pluripotency. Pluripotency is a phenomenon where a cell in an organism has the ability to change into any cell. These pluripotent cells are called stem cells, and these are the architects of our body, responsible for building tissues and organs of the organism. During embryonic development, the cells are undifferentiated, but they will change to specialized cells as the embryo develops. This means that cells that undergoes differentiation will have a fixed fate and will not change into a different cell midway. If a cell is destined to develop into an eye, it will develop into an eye and not a mouth. This principle is reflected in earth protostomes and deuterostomes. As we know that protostome blastospore become the mouth, while deuterostome blastospore becomes the anus. Protostomes have spiral cleavage pattern, while deuterostome have a cranial cleavage pattern. During the cleavage pattern of protostomes, if we remove one cell, the organism will be incomplete, while if we remove a cell in deuterostomes, they will develop into two complete organisms. This phenomenon is called twin. This allows deuterostomes for more complex organ systems because of the flexibility of cell development than protostomes. Also, this can also be seen during the gastrulation phase, most perfectly seen in the Spearman-Mangold experiment in an embryo's dorsal lip. A dorsal lip is a group of organizing cells which is important in the development of an entire organism, where Hilde Mangold took a group of these organizing cells of one embryo and transplanted them into another developing embryo. They will develop into a Siamese twins-like fashion. Why are we talking about this? Because in Carlin 5, this is important to understand how complexity in biformatans arise. First, we should talk about the hexaformis clade, the ancestor of all biformatans. This clade has 6 mouths in a single anus, where blastophores invaginate and meet at the center, creating a central gut in a single anus. Their cell development is simple and determinate. If we were to remove the blastophores, the organism will be incomplete. As we see, with the removing of a blastophore of the 6 blastophore hexaformis, they will exhibit a pentaradial symmetry instead of a hexaradial, which reduces their fitness. So, they are equivalent to protostomes in this case. Then, we will look at the biformatans. Their cellular fate is also similar, but with a twist. They have 2 blastophores which develop into a complete gut and anus by themselves. The remaining 4 are reduced, which may become digestive glands, respiratory organs, or sense organs. Their through gut have indeterminate fate, which meant it can change depending on the location of their other blastophores, as with this case, forming a stomach. The posterior blastophores release a protein that will induce the main blastophore to develop a stomach in the posterior. If this blastophore switch places with an anterior blastophore, the stomach will form anteriorly. This flexibility allows biformatans to be polymorphic or have multiple body shapes. Now that we talked about the processes, we will introduce the clades that will exhibit their unique embryonic development. From the Astroformis clade, there are 2 types of embryonic development, protihexaregularians and the hexaregularians, where hexaregularians is the development we just discussed. Also, from the Nuperdiatan clade, there are 2 developmental determinations, protoregularians and the monoregularians. These 2 are familiar to earth protostomes and deuterostomes respectively. Now that we have laid out the groundwork of development of our organisms, we will now continue on to the biformatans. The biformatans are the bilaterally symmetrical descendants of the Nyxostellans, a clade of radially symmetrical animals. This clade consists of 2 phyla, Quadroformata and the superphyla Malacopod. The Malacopod is also further split into 3 subphylas, the Saxopod, Yung Malacopod, and the Chondropod. These clades have an identifying characteristic of having 2 mouths with 4 additional mouths atrophying into glands or respiratory or accessory organs. First, we should talk about the Quadroformata. Basically, these are biformatans that return to radial symmetry with a tetraradial symmetry. They have bilateral larval shape and a radially symmetrical adult form. This resembles echinoderms or starfishes on Earth, which evolved from bilaterally symmetrical ancestor. In this case, the animal went from bilaterally symmetrical animals to tetraradially symmetrical animals. They evolved this way because of the evolutionary pressure of their ancestral radial symmetry of the Nyxostellans. they take on niches of being consumers of coral, algae, and sometimes other animals. Next, we are going to talk about the rest of the true biformatans. The first of the biformatans are the saxopods, a diverse clade of chitinous biformatans. The saxopods include the boxcrab, among many other genera. They have a hard exoskeleton made out of chitin. They have two mouths which has chitinous mandibles to chew food. Their body plan is simple, with posterior blastopore becoming glands and sex organs, while the anterior form the respiratory tree. Currently, there are three classes of saxopod phyla. We cannot pinpoint every exact niche that the species inhabit due to their abundance, but we can give a general overview of what niche they can occupy. First of the saxopod class are the Cuboda, a class of box-shaped animals. They are mostly benthic predatory organisms. They are considered the basal animal of the saxopod phyla. They have a pair of forward appendages that can extend in their trunk to catch prey items. The Cuboda species are mostly ambush hunters using the incredible speed of their arms. Second is the Octasaxa or the Octomites, a class of 8-legged saxopods. They flap their padded swimmerets to generate thrust in the water. They are small and they live mostly on the coast, where nutrients is abundant. They take on similar niche to earth copepods or shrimps, relying on their sheer numbers for their species survival, becoming the dominant plankton as well as replacing the planktonic microdiatans. Finally, we have the Vitaforma or the ribbon mites, a class of long segmented saxopods. They crawl on the seafloor in search for carrion or other benthic animals. They are similar to the Vermidiatan, but they take a more predatory niche and are more like mimicking earth centipedes. A perfect example of segmentation, where repetition occurs, allowing for modular body plan, where genes express the components of the organism, similar to Hox's genes found on Earth. These three classes will make up the saxopod phyla with their respective general niches. Now, we will go and discuss about the second phyla, the Eumalacopods. Before talking about the Eumalacopod and the Chondropod, we should look at their body plan first. Seen in this graph, their lateral blastopore connected into a tube called the respiratory tube. This tube is used for gas exchange, where the gas enters the anterior opening and is expelled through the posterior opening. This is a highly efficient form of respiration, where I call it tubular respiration. The Eumalacopods are soft-bodied biformatans without an exoskeleton and an endoskeleton. However, they may have a calcium carbonate shell which makes them similar to earth snails. They have two mouths but aren't mandibular like saxopods. They are radulated which grind on each other, enabling them to chew. The Eumalacopod is very diverse, but they have two major classes. The first of the two classes are the Rhadophagos, or the foot lurchers, a snail-like organism. They glide using their muscular foot. They can also catch their prey using their foot so that they may use their radulated mouths to masticate them. They may also exhibit a shell for protection against their predators. These organisms will take on niches similar to marine snails and slugs. Some species are known to undergo kleptoplasty, where they steal the xanthoplast from algae and incorporating them into their body, turning them photosynthetic themselves. These resemble earth slugs that acquire chloroplast, which enables them to undergo photosynthesis. The next class is the Eaculator, or the jet squids. These are a squid-like class of eumalacopods, aptly named for their ability to use jet propulsion. This is due to the respiratory tubes taking in water and expelling it at the other end, producing thrust. These organisms move fast speeds, enabling them to outpace their predators or catch their own prey. The final phyla of the biformata clade is the chondropod. These organisms have an endoskeleton made up of cartilage, a very elastic type of skeleton. They have a stretchy skin that allows them to be more flexible, which lets them fit into tighter spaces. These organisms cling to hard surfaces, filter feeding on plankton, passing through the current, or attaching to algae to feed on it. They have three classes. The first class is the chondrobrachid. This chondropod usually sits on rocks or coral. It usually feeds on plankton, but occasionally some species would be specialized for macropredatory niches, eating Pisciformes. Some will have long elastic arms which end on serrated chitin claw, while others have feather duster-like arms to filter plankton. The second class is the chondrotesta. These chondropods are shelled with a cartilage. They usually lay still in the seabed, sifting through the sand for detritus, sucking in the particulates into their mouth. Their shell may be soft and elastic, but the current animals do not have the capacity to puncture such defense. The final class is the chondronulia. These are chondropods that evolved to lose their cartilaginous endoskeleton. Their endoskeleton became hydrostatic. They evolved this way to crawl between the crevices in the coral reefs. They can secrete a sticky mucus to catch small prey or to deter predators. It may seem odd to have them in the clade of chondropod without a cartilaginous endoskeleton, but they still have a common ancestor. Therefore, they are still considered a chondropod. This example of losing a part is called secondary simplification. Now that we got the overview of the biformatans, we can see how they evolve across the history of the planet past the Marianas period. They will have a greater implications in their evolutionary history. Beyond the sandy plains is the open ocean, where the seafloor goes deeper into the abyssopelagic zone, where no light reaches. Currently, very few life can be found in the open ocean. Bottom-dwelling animals such as the saxopod, manacopod snails, and a few brachiogastans can be seen feeding in the marine snow that comes from the coast. Above, there are few nutrients found. Plankton is few, but light is abundant. Here, we can find the migrating modularis, a colonial organism. They drift under the waves, basking under the light of the sun. Their alga symbiotes provide them with food and nutrients as they cruise. Now that we are discussing the modularis, we can now deep dive on their biology. The modularis are not one organism, but are a colony of organisms of the same species. Each organism, called zooids, are specialized to fit their job. These zooids are organized to keep the colony whole. Each zooid contains yellow algae which provide the zooid with energy. This is what gives the modularis their signature color, but they may also recruit other algae with different colors. The modularis have many types of zooids, but for simplicity, we can give 5 important zooids of the colony. The first and the most important zooids are the central zooids that produce modulari, which gives the colony a shape and a place for attachment. These zooids hold most of the vascular tissue which distributes nutrients across the colony. They are considered the main body of the colony, where buds grow to become specialized zooids. A colony can have up to 1 or 5 central zooids. The second main zooid is the nectophores. These zooids are responsible for movement of the colony. They use jet propulsion, where it engulfs water and expels it, creating thrust. Many modularis consist of multiple nectophores, depending on the size of the colony. Another important zooid is the pneumatophores, which are structural zooids that makes the colony buoyant. Next are the gastrozoids, zooids that produce digestive enzymes to break down food. It is also responsible for absorption of nutrients before being shared to the colony. Lastly are the gonozoids, which produce sperm and egg cells for reproduction. One key aspect to know is their modularin, a cellulose-based molecule, which they use as structure. It is mostly indigestible by most organisms, which reduces possible predators. They are also made up of 90% water, which makes them less nutritious to predators. An example of modularis are the pseudogelly, a modularis from the Micromodularis clade, with up to a dozen zooids. They resemble jellyfish, which flap their bells with their nectozoids. It has 6 gastrozoids, which have tentacle-like appendages, which can catch prey with their stinging nematocysts. Another notable modularis are the platyphytes, which are micromodularis that form pancake-like colonies that attach at the seafloor of coasts. It is mostly made up of structural zooids that house millions of algae, which provides them with energy. They are flat to maximize sunlight for the algae. The modularis also have larger colonies, such as the megamodularis. These colonies can have up to 100 zooids, and colonies can be as large as 10 meters long. One thing to note is their algal symbiotes, which provide them with sugar even at nutrient-poor environments. The modularis will also provide their algal symbiotes with nitrogenous waste. These two symbionts will share with each other, becoming very efficient. This characteristic allowed Megamodulara to migrate through the nutrient-poor ocean to the nutrient-rich coast. These organisms migrate from coast to coast in the tropical regions. This behavior can be obvious on smaller organisms. Smaller nekton have no incentive to migrate from coast to coast, but with the aid of the modularis, they can travel to far distances, living within the modularis cavity, eating on algae and dead zooids, as well as providing the modularis with fecal material for their algal symbiotes. This mutualistic relationship allowed nectonic animals to travel around the world, spreading different species across the planet, making the modularis the biodiversity caravan of the ocean, spreading life. As of now, we have ignored the planet itself. It is time that we look broadly at the planet and see what it looks like. Right now, there are 6 continents. In the north, we see Huronia and Calamit. These 2 small continents are destined to merge as their tectonic plates meet. In the west, Gurania and Garnia, 2 colossal continents meeting with the energy of 100 nuclear bombs at every square inch. Next, Amenika and Kulwajit form the Archipelago Shallows. This collection of islands is where most of the life in its diversity is located. The Megamodularis migration always starts here, and with that, they allow life to spread across the planet. Now that life has established itself in the oceans of Carlin 5, from the coastal reefs to the mostly empty ocean, we will see how all these new organisms will evolve throughout the history of the planet. Some clades will rise and some will fall, but that is how life is. Next episode, we are going to see a new dawn of an era, seeing new species as well as how they have developed, as well as the event that will change life forever.